The wind sang through the barbed wire like a mouth harp, low and mournful in the evening heat. Eliza Vale stood atop the windmill platform, wrench in hand, working the rusted bolt that held the tail vane in place. 23 years on this earth, every one of them spent at Hart's Crossing, and she knew the sound of each fence post, each creaking board, each stubborn piece of machinery that kept the homestead alive. The bolt wouldn't budge. She leaned her weight into it, boot braced against the platform rail. Below, the pump rod hung silent. 3 days without water drawn up meant the cattle clustering around the stone trough, lowing their thirst. The spring rains had been sparse, the summer brutal. Every drop mattered. She heard the horse before she saw it hoofbeats steady on the hard-packed road that led from town. Not the sheriff's heavy trot, not the hurried pace of her neighbor Sam McKenna when his wife took ill. This was the measured gait of someone who knew long distances, who saved their mount's strength. The rider appeared through the heat shimmer, a dark figure against the pale dust. Eliza didn't stop working. Travelers passed through sometimes, heading west to California goldfields or south to the border. They wanted water, directions, sometimes a meal. She gave what she could spare, which wasn't much these days. The bolt finally gave squealing protest. She adjusted the vane, feeling the mechanism catch the wind properly. The mill blades began their slow turn. Below, the pump rod lifted, dropped, lifted again. Water would flow soon. "Ma'am." The voice came from directly below. The rider had dismounted at the base of the windmill, holding his horse's reins loose in one hand. Dark hat pulled low, dust on his coat, saddlebags that had seen miles. A drifter, like dozens before. "Water's in the trough," she called down, not pausing in her work. "Help yourself." "Obliged." He led his horse to drink, but didn't move toward the trough himself. Instead, he looked up at her, squinting against the late sun. That's dangerous work for a woman. She'd heard it before. "Been doing it since I was 12. Was going to say for anyone working alone. She glanced down at him then, couldn't make out much of his face under the hat brim, but his stance was easy. Weight balanced like a man comfortable anywhere he stood. Hispanic features, maybe, or mixed blood. Dark hair where it showed at his collar. The platform board under her left foot, weakened by sun and rain, chose that moment to crack. Her boot went through, throwing her sideways. The wrench flew from her hand, clanging against the mill frame. She grabbed for the rail, missed, felt herself falling. A hand caught her wrist. Strong grip, work-calloused palm. He'd scaled the ladder fast as a cat, was hauling her back onto the solid portion of the platform before she'd fully registered the fall. "Steady now." His voice stayed calm, like catching falling women was ordinary business. "Got you." She found her footing, pulled her wrist free. His hand released immediately. No lingering touch, professional. She'd met his kind before, men who lived by swift action and swifter departure. "I had it handled." "Yes, ma'am." No argument, no wounded pride. He backed toward the ladder. "Board's rotted through, needs replacing." "I'm aware." He nodded, descended. She followed, testing each rung, angry at the tremor in her legs. At the bottom, she straightened her skirt, a gesture that felt foolish in her work clothes. The stranger had moved back to his horse, was untying something from his saddle. A canvas water bag. Military issue. He set it on the ground near the trough. "In case your pump sticks again." He swung into the saddle with economy of motion, touched his hat brim. "Safe travels, ma'am." "Wait." The word came before she thought it. He reined in, patient. "You have a name." "Jonah Reyes." "Going far." "Far enough." She recognized the non-answer of a man with reasons to keep moving. "Town's 8 miles west. Fuller's Station. They'll have lodging." "Appreciated." He studied her a moment. "You might want help with that platform before someone gets hurt." I manage fine on my own." Something shifted in his expression recognition. Maybe of a fellow traveler on the lone road. "Expect you do." He rode out the way he'd come, unhurried. Eliza watched until the dust of his passage settled. Then she looked at the water bag he'd left. Good canvas, worth $1 or $2. She should have refused it, called him back. Independence had a price, and accepting charity was no part of it. But she let it stay. The wind picked up as evening came on, and the barbed wire sang its rusty song. She collected her tools, favoring the ankle she'd twisted in the near fall. The platform would need fixing tomorrow. Fence posts to check after that. The endless round of maintenance that kept the land from swallowing what her father had built. Inside the small house, she lit the lamp and opened the ledger. Numbers that wouldn't balance no matter how she figured them. The banknote coming due, cattle prices down, water rights under challenge from the railroad's expansion, her father's dream becoming her slow defeat. She touched the canvas water bag where she'd hung it by the door. Still cool, beaded with moisture. A practical gift from a practical man. Nothing more. That night she dreamed of falling, but in the dream, no hand caught her. She woke to moonlight through thin curtains and the sound of her fence wire singing, singing, singing in the wind. Morning brought the necessity of work. She mixed mortar from her dwindling supply of lime, climbed the windmill with boards salvaged from the old chicken coop. The repair was rough but solid. It would hold. From the platform, she could see for miles. The road stretched empty in both directions. To the west, the smudge of Fuller's Station. To the east, the dark line of the mesa where Indian trails still wound through the rocks. Her domain, held by will and stubborn refusal to yield. She'd been 14 when her mother died of the fever, 17 when her father followed, leaving her a deed, a dozen cattle, and a promise extracted on his deathbed. Don't let them take it, Eliza. Not the bank, not the railroad, not any man who'd claim it through you. This land stays Vale land. She'd kept that promise, turned away 2 suitors who saw widow's weeds as opportunity, learned to shoot straight, fix what broke, doctor sick cattle. Neighbors whispered. Of course, virgin spinster. They called her when they thought she couldn't hear. Unnatural for a woman to choose solitude. Let them talk. The land didn't care for gossip. It cared for water. Fence lines held true. Debts paid on time. She gave it what it needed. And it gave back survival. Barely. The morning grew hot. She climbed down, checked the pump running smooth now, and walked the fence line, where the wire had gone slack. She tightened it, where posts tilted. She packed fresh earth around their bases, simple work that left the mind free to wander. She found herself thinking of the stranger's hands, not their touch that had been brief, impersonal but their condition, scarred across the knuckles, one finger slightly crooked from an old break, rope burns on the palms, working hands, but not a laborer's, something else, guard work, maybe, riding shotgun for the freight companies. None of her business. He was miles gone by now. Probably forgotten the lonely woman and her rotted windmill. She had real problems to occupy her thoughts. The bank agent would come calling soon. Sheriff Croft, too, with his papers and legal words meant to confuse. They'd offer their solution again: marriage to Charles Whitcomb, the banker's son. Debt forgiven, water rights secured, respectability restored. All it would cost was everything. She finished the fence check as noon approached. Her stomach reminded her breakfast had been thin porridge. Dinner would be the same, but the garden produced enough to keep hunger at bay. And McKenna's wife sometimes traded eggs for mending. At the house, she paused. Fresh hoofprints marked the dust by the trough. She knelt, studied them. Not the same horse as yesterday, these shoes showed more wear, the gait shorter. Someone had come while she worked the back fence. Her rifle leaned inside the door. She retrieved it, checked the load, stepped back out. Nothing moved in the shimmering heat, but there a folded paper tucked under the water bag. She approached carefully, though instinct said danger wouldn't announce itself with notes. The paper was good quality, the writing precise. Miss Vale, your presence is requested at the bank Thursday next, 2 p.m., regarding your account. Prompt attendance will be to your advantage. C. Whitcomb, Sr. Thursday. 3 days. She crumpled the paper, then smoothed it out again. Evidence might matter later. The wind shifted, bringing the scent of mesquite smoke. Someone burning brush to the south. The Hendricks family. Probably. Clearing new ground. They had 3 sons to work their place. A wife to tend the house. Different kind of wealth than money. She went inside, added the bank notice to the stack of papers in her father's desk. Maps, deeds, letters from the territorial governor about water rights, weapons in their own way. If she could learn to use them. The afternoon stretched long. She patched harness leather, sharpened tools, made plans she knew might come to nothing. When evening painted the sky purple and orange, she stood in the doorway watching shadows lengthen across her land. The windmill turned steady in the evening breeze. Water flowed for today. That was enough. But she found herself listening for hoofbeats on the road. Found herself wondering if a man who caught falling women might circle back to check his work. Foolish thought. Men like that didn't circle back. They moved in straight lines toward horizons that always receded. She touched the place on her wrist where his fingers had gripped. No mark remained. As if the rescue had been something she'd imagined, like the dreams where her mother still lived and her father still knew which end of a hammer to hold. The fence wire sang its evening song. She went inside, lit the lamp, opened the ledger again. Numbers didn't lie, didn't vanish with morning light. They told their hard truth in columns that wouldn't balance. 3 days until Thursday. She'd meet Whitcomb at the bank, listen to his offer, refuse again. He'd threaten foreclosure. She'd cite her father's water rights, prior appropriation. First in time, first in right, the dance they'd done before. But something felt different this time. The smoke smell lingered when it should have dissipated. The sheriff had been by while she was gone, checking her defenses, maybe seeing how alone she really was. She cleaned the rifle, set it close to hand. Let them come. The land had taught her patience. Seasons of drought and seasons of plenty. It had taught her to read signs in wind and weather. Most of all, it had taught her that survival meant standing firm when everything pressed you to yield. Tomorrow she'd ride to the McKennas, trade mending for supplies. Day after, mend the chicken coop properly. Small steps toward Thursday's confrontation. For now, she had water in the trough, food for morning, walls to keep the night at bay, and on a peg by the door, a canvas water bag left by a stranger whose name she'd probably never speak again. The lamp flame flickered. She trimmed the wick, settled it steady. Outside, darkness swallowed the land she'd sworn to hold. But morning would come, as it always did, and she'd be ready to meet it. Alone, as she'd chosen, as she'd always been. The wind sang through the wire, and she listened to its harsh music until sleep finally claimed her. The hot wind tore through at dawn, violent and unexpected. Eliza woke to the sound of wood splintering the barn roof peeling back like paper. She grabbed her boots, didn't bother with stockings, ran outside to find half her world transformed. The chicken coop had collapsed entirely. Birds scattered across the yard, squawking outrage. Worse, the gate to the calf pen hung twisted on one hinge, and the calves were gone. Their tracks led toward the open range where coyotes hunted and deeper arroyos could swallow young stock whole. She saddled her mare fast, cursing the wind that still gusted hard enough to snatch her hat. No time to gather supplies. The calves were her future next year's herd, next year's payment to the bank. Without them, Thursday's meeting would be a formality before foreclosure. The trail was clear at first, 6 calves moving together, scared but not scattered. She pushed the mare harder than was wise in the heat, following prints through bunchgrass and around stands of mesquite. The land rose toward the western breaks, rocky country that could hide or kill with equal ease. An hour out, the track split, 3 veering north toward Skeleton Ridge, 3 continuing west. She reined in, calculating, alone. She could follow 1 group, maybe save half. The other 3 would be coyote food by nightfall. Easy decision, she told the mare, who flicked her ears at the lie. Nothing easy about choosing which animals lived or died, but the western tracks led toward water. Anderson's Creek ran that way. Even in drought years, calves might survive there. The ones heading north faced only rock and thorns. She turned west, hating herself for it. Another mile, and she found the first calf tangled in a wash, legs twisted in dead cottonwood roots. Alive, but barely. She dismounted, worked it free, checked for breaks. Just scared and scraped. She hazed it back toward home, hoping instinct would guide it while she searched for the others. The second calf had fallen down a cut bank, 6 feet of sheer dirt. It stood at the bottom, bawling. No way to get it up alone. She'd need rope, maybe help. The third was nowhere in sight. She marked the spot with stacked rocks and turned back. Get rope, get the trapped calf, search for the last one. A full day's work if she was lucky. If she wasn't. She heard the horse before she saw him. Same measured gait as 2 days ago. Jonah Reyes crested the rise, leading her 3 wayward calves, the ones she'd abandoned to chase the others. They walked docile as dogs behind his mount. Yours. He touched his hat brim. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Relief and suspicion warred in her chest. Men didn't just appear when needed. They came with purposes, prices, debts to collect. Found them heading for trouble near the ridge. Figured they belonged to someone. He studied her wind-torn appearance. The single calf she'd rescued. Rough morning. Wind took the barn roof, scattered everything. She hated explaining. Hated more that she needed what he offered. One's trapped in a wash back there. Another's still missing. Show me. Simple words. No bargaining. No mention of payment. She should refuse. Handle her own problems. Instead, she turned the mare and led him to the cut bank. He swung down with that same easy motion, pulled rope from his saddle. Hold this end. Together they rigged a crude pulley around a sturdy mesquite. He dropped into the wash smooth as water, got the rope around the calf's middle. She backed her mare, pulling steady while he lifted and guided. The calf came up bawling but whole. That's 5, he said, brushing dirt from his hands. Where'd the 6th go? No sign past here. She coiled the rope. Movements, automatic. Could be anywhere by now. He remounted, studied the ground. Wind's been from the southwest. Scared calf would drift with it. He pointed northeast. Box Canyon that way. Natural trap. She knew the place. Navajo Pocket, locals called it. From the old days when raiders would hide stolen horses there. That's rough country. Your calf. Meaning her choice. But he waited, patient, like he had nowhere else to be. She thought of the banknote. Thursday approaching like a storm. Every calf mattered. All right. They hazed the 5 rescued calves into a small draw where they'd stay put. Then rode for the canyon. The wind had died to gusts, but dust still hazed the air. She pulled her kerchief up. Noticed he did the same. Small gestures of shared understanding. The canyon mouth was choked with catclaw and wait-a-minute bushes. Thorns catching at everything. They dismounted, pushed through on foot. Her sleeve caught. Tore. She kept moving. Inside, the walls rose 40 feet. Red rock banded with white, and there the last calf, backed against the far wall, wild-eyed but unhurt. I'll circle behind. Jonah said, You block the entrance. They worked without words, smoothly as partners. He eased around. She spread her arms wide. The calf bolted for freedom. She stepped left. It veered into his wading rope. Clean catch, no fight. He let it out gentle as a pet. Back at the draw, they gathered all 6 calves. She expected him to leave then. Good deed done. Instead, he looked at the sky. Storm building. We should move. She saw it too. Clouds piling up black to the north. Not rain clouds. Dust storm. The kind that could flay skin. Blind cattle. Bury landmarks. They needed shelter fast. There's a line shack, she said. McKenna's old place. Half-mile. They drove the cabs hard, racing the storm. It caught them anyway. A wall of dust that turned day to twilight. She pulled her kerchief higher, squinted through stinging grit, lost all sense of direction except for his shape beside her, herding steady. The shack materialized like a ghost ship, weathered boards barely standing. They pushed the cabs into the lean-to, then stumbled inside as the storm hit full force. Wind screamed through gaps in the walls. Dust filled the air thick as flour. She found the old lamp by feel. Miracle it still had oil. Light helped, showing a single room with broken furniture and years of pack rat nests. But the roof held, mostly. Jonah had his back to her, checking a tear in his shirt. No, not checking. Pressing a bandana to his shoulder where red seeped through. You're hurt. Caught a nail getting through the barn earlier. He'd helped with her calves while bleeding. It's nothing. Sit down. He turned, maybe to argue. Saw her face. Sat. She found the old water bucket. Mostly clean. Tore strips from her petticoat, it was ruined anyway. Take your shirt off. The wound ran 6 inches across his shoulder blade. Not deep, but dirty. Rust from the nail. Dust from the storm. Sure path to blood poisoning if untreated. This'll hurt. She wet the cloth. Had worse. She cleaned carefully, aware of the intimacy. A woman tending a half-dressed stranger while stormlight flickered. But medical necessity made its own rules. She doctored animals, neighbors, her father in his last illness. This was just another chore. Except for the way he held still under her hands, the heat of his skin, the scars she glimpsed old wounds that told their own stories. You've been shot. She traced a puckered mark below his ribs. Once or twice. Law trouble. Other kind. He didn't elaborate. She found the small bottle of carbolic in her saddlebag, always carried it for emergencies. Dabbed it on while he breathed careful through the sting. There. She wrapped the bandage tight. Keep it clean. Should heal fine. He pulled his torn shirt back on. Obliged. They sat opposite each other while the storm raged. She wanted to ask why he'd come back. What brought him to her land at just the right moment? But the questions felt too large for the small space. The banker, he said suddenly. Whitcomb. He hiring guns. The shift caught her off guard. Why? Saw 2 men in town. Way they watched when your name came up. My name came up. Asked about water rights. Who held what claims? He met her eyes steady. Your name came up frequent. She thought of the sheriff's visit, the smoke smell that lingered wrong. Whitcomb wants my land, wants me to marry his son to get it. And you said no. I said no. He nodded, like that explained everything. Maybe it did. A woman alone who wouldn't be moved threat to the whole careful order of things. They mean to pressure you. They've been pressuring for months. Different now. The men I saw weren't talkers. She absorbed that, added it to her calculations. Thursday's meeting might not be about papers after all. The storm was passing, wind dropping from scream to moan. Through the cracked door, she could see lighter sky. Why tell me, she asked. He stood, tested the door. Someone should know what's coming. And you just happened to be passing through. Again. Something flickered in his expression. Told you, going far enough. Which wasn't an answer, but she'd taken his help, used his rope and knowledge. Questions came with their own debts. They ventured out to find the world remade. Dust drifts like snow against every vertical surface. The calves huddled together, coated but alive. Her barn would be gone completely now. She knew, more work, more expense. But 6 calves lived that might have died. That counted for something. They drove the animals home slow, letting them find their feet. At her gate, He helped push them through, then sat his horse like before, ready to leave. "Stay for supper," she heard herself say. "It's little enough for no debt." He cut her off gentle. "But I'll take water for the road." She filled his canteens at the trough. Noticed he kept watching the horizon, reading signs she couldn't see. "Those men," she said, "if they come, they'll come." He secured the canteens. "Question is what you'll do when they do." "What I always do, stand my ground." He looked at her then. Really looked, like he was measuring something more than her words. "Ground's only as strong as what holds it," he said. "Might want to shore up your foundations." He touched his hat, turned to go. She watched him ride out. Same steady pace as always. At the bend, he looked back once, raised his hand. Not quite a wave, more like marking a spot to remember. She raised her own hand in answer. Then he was gone. Dust of his passage mixing with all the other dust this land produced. The calves milled in their pen, settling after adventure. She had work waiting the barn to clear, damage to assess, preparations for Thursday. But she stood a moment longer, hand still half raised. Shore up your foundations. She thought of her father's papers, the old Spanish grant that predated everything, the letters from the territorial governor about water rights, maybe weapons she hadn't known to use. The mesquite smoke smell was back, stronger now. Coming from the direction of the Hendricks place, too much smoke for clearing brush. She put the calves in the stone-walled pen, the one that would hold even if everything else blew away. Fed and watered her mare. Set out her father's shotgun along with the rifle. Then she lit her own lamp and pulled out every paper that might matter. If Thursday would bring a different kind of storm, she'd meet it prepared. Outside, dusk painted the land purple and gold, beautiful and treacherous as always. She touched her torn sleeve where thorns had caught, felt the echo of his hands steadying the rope. Ground's only as strong as what holds it. She'd held this ground alone for 6 years. But maybe alone wasn't the same as strong. Maybe strength sometimes looked like accepting help when offered, knowing when to stand and when to bend. The wind picked up again, rattling through her ruined barn. Tomorrow she'd see what could be salvaged. Tonight, she had different work. She spread the papers across her father's desk, began to read with new eyes, looking for the weapons Jonah Reyes had somehow known she'd need. The lamplight pooled on papers older than memory, edges brown as autumn leaves. Eliza traced the Spanish script with one finger. Words her father had taught her to read por derecho de primer uso, by right of first use. The original water claim, dated 1821 when this land still flew Mexico's flag. She'd always known about the document, but tonight, reading with new purpose, she saw what she'd missed. The claim wasn't just for Hart's Crossing. It covered the whole valley watershed, every spring and seep from here to the mesa. Whoever held this paper controlled life itself in drought country. Her father had been careful, filed copies with the territorial office when America took over. Got Judge Navarro to witness and seal the transfer when he bought the land from the Delgado family. Everything legal, everything proper. So why did Whitcomb think he could take it? She set aside the Spanish grant, picked up newer papers. Railroad surveys, dated last spring. The proposed line would run right through her southern pasture, needing water for the steam engines. Worth fortune to whoever controlled the source. There a name she recognized. Abel Croft, before he was sheriff, listed as surveyor's assistant, and another Hollis, territorial liaison, both on Whitcomb's payroll now. The web showed itself plain once you knew to look. She leaned back, rubbing tired eyes. Through the window, stars pricked out one by one, peaceful view that belied the danger gathering. Her father would have seen it sooner, would have known powerful men didn't survey unless they meant to take. From the small drawer of her mother's sewing table, she pulled the worn leather pouch. Inside, the charm her grandmother had made sage leaves wrapped with thread in a 6-pointed star. Para protection, the old woman had whispered. pressing it into 5-year-old Eliza's hands. For protection. She'd dismissed it as superstition when she got older. But tonight, with shadows pressing close, she tied it around her neck. The sage was brittle with age, but its sharp scent remained. Memory of stronger women. Older ways of standing ground. A coyote called from the ridge. Another answered. Closer. Hunting in pairs tonight. She checked the windows, tested the door bar. Strong enough to hold against animals. Against men, that remained to be seen. She returned to the papers, reading until her eyes burned. Tax receipts, all paid. Survey markers, registered proper. Water usage logs her father had kept, showing 20 years of careful management, building a case she might need to argue. Near midnight, she found it, tucked between 2 surveys, easy to miss. A letter from Whitcomb to someone named Morrison at the territorial capital. The Vale claim presents difficulties, but none insurmountable. The girl has no male protection. A few demonstrations of the hazards facing a woman alone should suffice. If not, Sheriff Croft will find violations. The water rights must be secured before the railroad advances. Her hands shook as she set it down. Not anger, she'd passed through anger into something colder. They'd planned this like a military campaign. Demonstrations of hazards. She thought of the Hendricks smoke, her torn fence she'd found last week, the dead calf in her well 2 months back. Not accidents. She folded the letter careful, slipped it inside her bodice. Evidence, if anyone would listen. If not, at least she knew the shape of what came for her. A knock at the door made her heart lurch. Past midnight, no good reason for visitors. She took the shotgun, approached careful. Miss Vale, it's Tom McKenna. She knew his voice. Opened the door. Her neighbor stood haggard in the moonlight, soot streaking his face. Fire at our place, he said without preamble. Barn's gone. House saved by miracle. Sarah and the boys are safe, but... He stopped, swallowed hard. It wasn't no accident. Found coal oil rags. Come in. She set down the gun, poured water. He drank grateful, hands still trembling. They left a note. He continued. Said this is what happens to those who side with troublemakers. Sarah thinks we both think it's because I spoke for you at the town meeting about your water rights being clear. The web drew tighter. Punish her allies. Isolate her further. Classic strategy. I'm sorry. Tom, this is my fight bringing trouble to your door. Don't you apologize, his voice firmed. My grandfather fought Santa Anna for this land. I'll not be burned out by bankers' boys. He met her eyes. But Sarah's scared, taking the children to her sister in Tucson until this settles. Leaving him alone to defend the homestead. Another family scattered. What will you do? Fight if they come back. Die if I have to. He stood. Wanted to warn you is all. They're moving fast now. She walked him to the door. Tom, the man who was here yesterday. Jonah Reyes. You see him in town. Dark fellow good with horses. At her nod. Saw him at the livery. Seemed to know his business. Why? Just wondering. Tom studied her face. Be careful, Eliza. Man like that might help, might bring worse trouble. Hard to tell which. After he left, she barred the door again. Sat in her father's chair, cradling the shotgun. The house felt smaller, pressed by darkness. Twice she dozed, jerked awake at sounds that might be wind or might be boots on gravel. Dawn came pale and dusty. She fed the stock, checked fences, kept the shotgun close. The calves clustered nervous, sensing threat the way animals do. Even her steady mare danced sideways at shadows. By noon, no one had come. She saddled up, rode to the boundary marker where her father had carved the water claim into a post thick as a man's waist. Still there, though someone had tried to burn it. Charred on one side but standing firm. She placed her hand on the carved wood, felt the depressions worn smooth by weather. I'm trying. Papa? She whispered. But they're coming at me from all sides. The post gave no answer, but touching it recalled his big hands covering hers, teaching her to write her name, teaching her to stand straight, speak clear, never apologize for taking up space in the world. Movement caught her eye. Rider approaching from the east, the hard way through the brakes. She raised the shotgun, then lowered it. That careful pace, that easy seat. She knew him before she could see his face. Jonah Reyes rode up slow, hands visible. His horse showed hard use, dust thick on its flanks. Expecting trouble, he indicated her weapon. McKenna's burned out last night. My turn next, I figure. He dismounted, let his horse drink from the small spring by the marker. Past 3 men headed this way, turned them around. Turned them around, how? Convinced them they had business elsewhere. He showed his teeth, not quite a smile. Can be persuasive when needed. She should ask what kind of persuasion. Should question why he kept appearing when trouble pressed close. Instead, you've been riding hard. Went to Fort Buchanan. Still have friends there. He pulled papers from his saddlebag. Thought these might interest you. Military documents, transfer orders for Sergeant J. Reyes, dated 8 years back, commendations for service guiding survey teams, and there a report about water rights disputes. His name listed as witness for several families cheated by false claims. You were Army. Scout, mustered out when they started taking sides in land grabs. He folded the papers. Point is, I know how they work. Railroad sends surveyors, finds what water it needs. Local money smooths the way. Sheriff enforces. Smallholders get pushed out or buried. Why do you care? He was quiet long enough she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, had a piece of land once, down near Mesilla. Little ranch, good water. Railroad wanted it. I said no. He touched his side where she'd seen the bullet scar. They were persuasive too. What happened? I lived. Ranch didn't. Simple words carrying weight of loss. Been drifting since, but seeing it happen again. He shook his head. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people lose to bad money. She wanted to trust him, but trust came hard when everyone had angles. What do you want from me? Nothing. He saw her disbelief. All right, cup of coffee would be good. Haven't stopped since yesterday. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Coffee I can manage. They rode back to her place, watchful, checking horizons. At the house, she made coffee strong while he tended his horse. Normal domestic sounds that felt strange with danger pressing close. He came in, hung his hat careful, sat at her table like he belonged there. She poured coffee, black and bitter as the situation. Thursday's tomorrow, she said. They'll make their move before then. Tonight, probably. Official meetings just to sweep up what's left. Then I'd better be ready. He studied her over the cup rim. You can't hold this place alone. Been doing it 6 years? Different now. They've got legal cover, hired guns, whole towns fear. What have you got? She pulled out the letter. Showed him. His face darkened reading it. This helps, but courthouse burns easy. Evidence disappears. Then what? Fight smarter. You've got prior claim. Military witnesses who'll testify. Judge Navarro, who hates the railroad. Use them. How? He set down the cup. I know someone in Prescott. Federal marshal, owes me favors. Get this to him. He'll investigate. Might take time, but I don't have time. Thursday's tomorrow. Then we stall. Make them show their hand public. They want this quiet. Make it loud. The word sat between them like a third presence. This isn't your fight, she said careful. Maybe not, but I'm making it mine. He met her eyes straight. Unless you object. She should object, should send him away. Handle her troubles alone like always. But the sage charm at her throat reminded her even strong women sometimes accepted help. Sometimes survival meant knowing when to bend so you didn't break. No objection, she said soft. Something eased in his shoulders. Good. Now, let's talk strategy. They spent the afternoon planning where to place water barrels in case of fire, which approaches to watch, how to use the house's position, backed against the rise. Military thinking applied to a homestead's defense. As evening approached, he stood. "I'll watch from the ridge tonight. Better view of approaches." "You could stay here." The words came out wrong. Too forward. "I mean, the barn's wrecked, but there's the lean-to. Ridge is better, but thank you." He touched his hat. "Keep the lamps low. Bar everything tight. If trouble comes, fire 3 shots. I'll hear." She watched him ride out, taking position like a sentry. The sunset painted everything red as blood, fitting color for what might come. Inside, she loaded both guns, set out water buckets, ate cold biscuits standing up, too nervous to sit, pulled her grandmother's charm tighter. Full dark fell. She turned the lamp low, took position by the window, watching, waiting. The fence wire sang its familiar song, but tonight it sounded like warning. From the ridge, a nighthawk called, or maybe a man imitating one. She found it oddly comforting, knowing someone watched, someone who'd chosen her fight for reasons she didn't fully understand but was beginning to trust. The stars wheeled overhead. She dozed in her chair, shotgun across her lap, ready as she could be for whatever dawn would bring. They came at first light, when shadows still pooled purple in the valleys. Eliza saw the dust before she heard the horses' 3 riders approaching steady down the main road. No attempt at stealth. They wanted to be seen. Sheriff Abel Croft led, his star catching the early sun. To his right rode Charles Whitcomb, Jr., overdressed for the desert in a city suit. The third man she didn't know, lean, careful, wearing his gun low. The kind of man you hired when talk failed. She stepped onto the porch, shotgun cradled loose but ready. Let them see her waiting. From the ridge, that nighthawk called again. Jonah, marking their positions. "Miss Vale?" Croft touched his hat brim, mockery of courtesy. "Early for visitors, but we've got business." "State it from there." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to women setting terms. "Need to inspect your property. Reports of water violations." "What reports?" "Anonymous complaints. You're drawing more than your share. They say, leaving downstream neighbors dry." Lies, but smooth ones. The nearest downstream neighbor was 15 miles, and the creek ran strong past her boundaries. "You got a warrant?" "Don't need one for water inspection. Territorial statute." He pulled a paper from his vest. "You can read it if you like." "Toss it over." More jaw tightening. But he dismounted, walked halfway to the porch, set the paper on a fence post, retreated. She retrieved it, read quick, real enough. If you ignored that the statute applied only to commercial operations. "I'm not commercial. This is a homestead." "You sell cattle, don't you? That's commerce." Croft smiled thin. "Now, we can do this easy or difficult. Your choice." Young Whitcomb spoke up, voice pitched nervous. "Miss Vale, surely you see the sense in cooperating. My father only wants to ensure fair water distribution." "Your father wants my land." She cut him off. "Same as he wanted the Delgado place and the Morrison spread and every other small holding with good water." The hired gun shifted in his saddle, hand drifting toward his pistol. She raised the shotgun slightly. He stilled. "Enough talk." Croft swung down heavy. "Hollis, check the well. Charlie, you examine those irrigation ditches. I'll inspect the house." "No." The word hung in morning air like a struck bell. Croft's face darkened. "You refusing lawful inspection?" "I'm refusing armed trespass based on false complaint." She kept her voice level. "Come back with a real warrant, naming real violations. Until then, get off my land." "Or what?" The hired gun Hollis spoke for the first time. Soft voice, more dangerous for its quiet. "You'll shoot 3 men, that how you want this to go?" "Nobody needs to shoot anybody." Jonah's voice came from behind them. He stood at the corner of the ruined barn, rifle easy in his hands. Must have circled down from the ridge in the pre-dawn dark. Lady asked you to leave. Polite thing would be doing it. Hollis turned slow in the saddle. Measuring the new threat, recognition flickered. Reyes, heard you were sniffing around. Hollis. Jonah nodded like they were meeting at church. Still hiring out to the highest bidder. Man's got to eat. Sure, but he ought to chew careful. Make sure he's not swallowing poison. The two men locked eyes. Some communication passed that Eliza couldn't read, but Hollis relaxed fractionally. Croft, though, went redder. This is official business. Reyes, interfere and I'll arrest you. For what, standing on private property with the owner's permission? Jonah smiled pleasant. That's thin, even for you. Young Whitcomb cleared his throat. Perhaps we should return to town. Sheriff, discuss our options.
Shut up, Charlie.
Croft's hand moved toward his gun. Touch it and I'll cut you in half. Eliza's voice stayed conversational, but she'd raised the shotgun to her shoulder. Both barrels are loaded. Sheriff, at this range, won't matter if you're wearing a badge or angel wings. Silence stretched taut. A roadrunner called from the scrub. Wind rattled the loose barn tin. Finally, Croft stepped back. This isn't over. Never thought it was. She kept the gun up. But for today, it is get gone. They mounted, Croft clumsy with rage. As they turned to leave, young Whitcomb looked back, something almost like apology in his face. Then Hollis said something low, and they spurred away. Eliza held position until the dust settled. Only then did her hands start shaking. Jonah crossed to the porch, propped his rifle against the rail. You all right? Fine. The word came out cracked. She set down the shotgun before she dropped it. That was close. That was just the opening dance. He watched the road where they'd disappeared. They'll be back. Tonight, maybe, with more men. Then what do I do? What your father should have done years ago. He pulled a folded paper from his shirt. Telegraph to Judge Navarro. Sent it last night from the stage station. He's agreed to review your water rights case, the original grants. Not this inspection nonsense. Set for Monday in the territorial court. Monday, 5 days away. They won't wait that long. No, which is why we need to complicate things. He handed her another paper. This one's to Marshal Brennan in Prescott. Details what Whitcomb's been doing. With that letter you found, it's enough to start federal investigation. She read quickly. He'd laid out the case: clear intimidation, false claims, sheriff's involvement. Her name featured prominent, but so did others. The McKennas, the Hendricks, half a dozen families pressured or burned out. This makes me a target. You're already a target. This makes you a witness. Harder to disappear witnesses. Federal marshals get touchy about that. Strategy within strategy. She was starting to understand how he thought. When did you learn all this? Army taught me to scout terrain. Law's just another kind of landscape. He leaned against the porch rail. Question now is whether you're willing to fight on that ground. She thought of her father's dreams, her mother's grave in the small plot behind the house. 6 years of work and loneliness and stubborn refusal to yield. I'm willing. Then we'd better prepare. They'll try to force your hand before Monday. Make you do something that looks bad to a judge. They spent the morning reinforcing defenses, boarding windows, moving water barrels, creating clear fields of fire, working together with the ease of long partnership, though they'd known each other mere days. As the sun climbed toward noon, a rider appeared. Not from town, from the Hendricks place. Young Peter Hendricks, 16 and trying to look older. Miss Vale. He reined up hard. Horse lathered. Ma sent me. Says to tell you there's a meeting at Whitcomb's bank. Bunch of men, including some she don't recognize. Thought you should know. Thank her for me. Eliza gave him water for his horse. Your family all right? Pa's ready, got the rifle cleaned and the boys watching. Pride and fear mixed in his voice. We ain't running. After he left, Jonah studied the horizon. They're gathering forces, probably move after dark. How many, you think? Croft, Hollis, maybe 4 or 5 hired guns, plus whoever they can deputize from town. He calculated. 10, 12 men. Against 2, 3. Tom McKenna rode through the gate, rifle across his saddle. Saw the Hendricks boy. Figured you might need another hand. Tom, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His face set stubborn. They burned my barn, scared my family. Man's got to stand for something. Jonah nodded approval. Know the ground. Born here, know every rock and gulch. They planned through the afternoon. Where to position, how to use the terrain, what to do if overwhelmed. Practical talk that kept the fear at bay. As shadows lengthened, Eliza made coffee and biscuits. They ate standing, watching. The desert went gold, then red, then purple. First stars pricked out. Whatever happens, she said quiet. Thank you, both of you. Tom just nodded, embarrassed. But Jonah met her eyes. Not done yet, he said. Full dark fell. They took positions, Tom in the ruined barn, with clear view of the road. Jonah by the well covering the back approach. Eliza in the house watching all directions. Waiting. The fence wire sang its night song. Coyotes called from the ridges. Normal sounds that tonight seemed weighted with menace. Then hoofbeats. Many horses, moving fast. No attempt at stealth now. They wanted fear more than surprise. Here they come, Tom called soft. Eliza counted muzzle flashes as riders spread out, surrounding the house. More than 12, closer to 20. Her mouth went dry. Eliza Vale, Croft's voice boomed. Come out peaceful. We've got warrants now. Real ones. Resisting arrest. Threatening an officer. Harboring a wanted fugitive. Jonah wanted. She pushed the thought aside. Deal with immediate threats first. Show yourself. Sheriff, she called back. Let me see these warrants. Movement by the gate. Croft stepped into moonlight. Papers held high. Perfect target. If she'd been the killing kind. But that's what they wanted excuse to storm the place. Toss them over. Come get them, unless you're scared of one woman. Trap obvious as a snare, but maybe. Jonah's rifle cracked. A man yelped, fell from his horse near the chicken coop. Not dead. Jonah had aimed for the shoulder, but it broke the tension like dropped glass. Take them, Croft roared. Gunfire erupted from all sides. Eliza dropped flat as windows shattered. Splinters flew from door frames. The old house groaned under the barrage. She crawled to a side window, poked the shotgun through, fired at shapes moving through her garden. Someone cursed, stumbled back. Tom's rifle spoke steady from the barn. Another attacker down, but there were too many, pressing from all angles. Kitchen door. Jonah's warning came barely in time. She spun, fired as a man burst through. He flew backward, clutching his chest. Not dead, the range was long for real damage, but hurt enough to stay down. Reload. Hands steady despite the chaos. More glass breaking. Smoke from somewhere they'd fired the chicken coop. Flames leaping high. A lull. Croft's voice again, last chance surrender or burn. Burn, like the McKenna place. Like every smallholder who wouldn't bow to power. Go to hell, she shouted back. More gunfire, but now different sounds. Horses screaming, men shouting in confusion, the attack faltering. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Many horses, but disciplined. Military cadence. Federal marshals, a new voice, commanding. Everybody drop weapons now. Some did. Others tried to run. Brief chase, more shouts. Then gradual quiet except for the chicken coop crackling. Eliza stayed low. Shotgun ready. Could be a trick. Miss Vale. The commanding voice again. Marshal Brennan. Jonah Reyes sent word. You can come out safe. She looked for Jonah, found him emerging from cover. He nodded. This was real. She stood on shaking legs, walked onto her porch. The yard swarmed with mounted marshals, rounding up Croft's men. The sheriff himself sat his horse rigid, face twisted with fury. Marshal Brennan touched his hat. Apologies for the late arrival. Rode hard from Prescott. He surveyed the damage. Looks like we have attempted murder, arson, assault on a landowner. Sheriff Croft, you're under arrest. This is my jurisdiction, Croft sputtered. That woman threatened. Save it for the judge. Brennan nodded to his men. Take him. As they led Croft away, young Whitcomb edged his horse forward, blood on his sleeve, face pale in firelight. Miss Vale, my father had no part in this, I swear. When Croft started gathering men, I sent a rider to Prescott. This wasn't supposed to. Tell it to the judge. Brennan cut him off. You're coming too. But Eliza saw something in the boy's face. Not his father's greed, but genuine horror at where greed led. He sent for you, she asked Brennan. His message, crossed with Reyes, helped us move faster. The marshal studied young Whitcomb. Might count for something at trial. They took them all, wounded and whole. The yard emptied except for marshals taking statements, collecting evidence. Tom emerged from the barn, grinning wide. We did it, held them off. We did. But Eliza felt no triumph, just tired relief. Jonah appeared at her elbow, soot-streaked, sleeve torn, but steady as always. You all right? Fine. She touched his arm where blood seeped. You're hurt.
Scratch. Had worse.
That echo of their first meeting. But now she knew what worse meant, knew the scars he carried. Marshal Brennan approached. Miss Vale, I'll need your statement, but that can wait for morning. Post some men here tonight. Make sure nobody tries anything foolish. Thank you. He tipped his hat, moved off. Tom headed home to reassure his family. The chicken coop burned down to embers, and Eliza stood on her porch with Jonah, watching smoke rise against stars. That was close, she said. Too close. His voice carried weight. Brennan wants me to testify. About Croft, what I know, means staying around a while. Will you? He turned to face her. In the dying firelight, she could see him considering this man who never stopped moving, never put down roots. If you'll have me, temporarily. Temporarily, but he was here now. That was enough for tonight. The barn needs rebuilding, she said. Could use an extra hand. He almost smiled. Guess I'd better stay then. They stood together watching the last flames die. Tomorrow would bring questions, trials, the slow machinery of justice. But tonight, her land was safe, her water ran free, and she wasn't alone. The fence wire sang soft in the darkness. For once, it sounded like peace. The days fell into rhythm like water finding its course. Jonah rose before dawn, moving quiet as shadow through the house. By the time Eliza stirred, coffee would be brewing. The most necessary chores already started. They worked the edges of each other's space, careful as new neighbors learning boundary lines. He slept in what remained of the barn, had insisted on it despite her offer of her father's old room. Wouldn't be proper, he'd said. And that was that. But propriety was a strange word for their arrangement. Nothing proper about an unmarried woman keeping company with a drifter, even one who'd saved her land. The town whispered. Of course, she heard echoes when she went for supplies, but whispers carried less sting when federal marshals kept watch on the road. Morning of the fourth day. She found him mending the fence where attackers had cut through. His movements were methodical stretch wire, wrap, twist. The torn shoulder had healed quick, leaving another scar for his collection. That's the third time you've fixed that section, she observed. Third time it needed it. He tested the tension. Good fence makes good neighbors. We don't have neighbors on this side, just open range. Maybe that's why it needs to be good. She watched him work, noting how his hands never stopped moving, building, fixing, improving, like stillness might let something catch up. Marshal Brennan says the trial's been moved up. Friday now. His hands paused barely a heartbeat. Good. Sooner it's done. Sooner things settle. Will they settle? She fingered a fence post worn smooth. Whitcomb's still out there. Still has money. Influence. Not as much. Bank's under investigation now. Young Charlie's testimony saw to that. He moved to the next section. Your water rights are safe. Judge Navarro made that clear. Legal words that should have brought relief. Instead, she felt oddly hollow. The fight had given shape to her days. Without it, what came next? Eliza. He'd stopped working, was looking at her direct. You won that fight. Be glad of it. I am. The words came out flat. That evening, she made stew from the last of her preserved beef. They ate in companionable silence. Lamp casting gold circles on the scrubbed table. Outside, a screech owl called. The sound no longer made her reach for the shotgun. My husband loved that sound, she said sudden. Jonah's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Husband! Heat flooded her face. Where had that come from? I meant father. My father loved owls. But the word hung between them like smoke. She saw him working through it, understanding dawning. You've never been married. Not a question. She could have lied, saved what remained of her reputation. Instead, no. But they call you Mistress of Heart's Crossing. Mistress as in master, female master, owner. She met his eyes steady. Though I know what assumptions people make. He resumed eating, calm as if she'd commented on weather. Their assumptions are their problem. Simple acceptance that unknotted something in her chest. Doesn't bother you working for an unmarried woman. I've worked for worse. Ghost of a smile. At least you don't shoot at me. Day's not over yet. That surprised real laughter from him. Brief but genuine. The sound transformed his face, showing the younger man beneath the trail dust and caution. Later, dishes done. They sat on the porch watching stars emerge. The new fence line stood straight in moonlight. Tomorrow they'd start the barn proper. Plans made. Lumber ordered. Building instead of defending. That night, she said, Croft claimed you were wanted. A fugitive. Long pause. She thought he might not answer. Then, was, maybe still am, depending on whose law you follow. He leaned back, eyes on the horizon. That ranch I mentioned, near Messilia, when the railroad took it, I didn't go quiet, made noise, filed complaints. So they sent men. I defended myself. Killed them. One. Wounded 2 others. Self-defense. But the judge was Whitcomb's cousin. His voice stayed level, but she heard the old anger underneath. Got warned I'd hang if I stayed, so I didn't stay. She absorbed this. The man beside her had killed. Would kill again if cornered. Should have frightened her. Instead, she felt safer knowing he'd fight when pressed. Is that why you kept moving, they hunting you? For a while. Trail went cold after a year or 2. But by then, he shrugged. Moving became habit. And now I'm building a barn. He stood, stretched. Early start tomorrow. That lumber won't stack itself. She listened to him settle in the barn, arranging straw and blankets. Through thin walls, every sound carried. She knew when he cleaned his rifle, when he pulled off boots, when breathing evened into sleep. Strange intimacy, knowing someone's nighttime rhythms. Stranger still how natural it felt. Next morning brought company. Tom McKenna arrived with his eldest boy, tools in the wagon bed. Heard you were raising a barn, Tom said. Figured you could use hands. By noon, others had joined. The Hendricks men, the Parsons from the East Valley. Even Sam Rodriguez, who'd lost his place to Whitcomb last year but stayed to work shares. They came with hammers and expertise. with jokes and flasks of whiskey for lunch break. Eliza worked alongside them, fetching water, holding boards, ignoring surprised looks when she grabbed a hammer herself. This was her land, her barn. She'd build it with her own hands. "I never seen a woman frame a wall," young Peter Hendricks muttered. "Now you have," Jonah said mild, handing her more nails. "Watch, might learn something." The barn rose like a prayer against the sky. Post and beam, honest angles, solid joints. As afternoon wore on, talk turned from building to trials. Heard Crofts trying to claim he was just following orders. Sam said, putting it all on Whitcomb. "Won't work." Tom spat tobacco juice. "Too many witnesses now. That marshal's been thorough." What about after this from Hendricks Sr., voicing what they all wondered? "Whitcomb's got deep pockets. Could hire more guns." Could. Jonah's hammer never paused. But word's out now. Federal attention on the territory changes the game. "Besides," Tom added with a grin, "Miss Eliza's got herself a guard dog now." Laughter rippled through the group. Eliza felt heat in her cheeks but kept working. Let them joke. These men had come to help despite the risk. That mattered more than propriety. By evening, the barn stood complete but for the roof. They'd finish tomorrow. The helpers drifted away with promises to return, leaving Eliza and Jonah alone with their accomplishment. "Good bones," he said, testing a corner post. "Stand for years." "Longer than that, I hope." She touched the fresh wood. Smelled pine pitch and possibility. "Thank you for organizing this. I didn't—" Tom started it. Others just followed. He glanced at her. "You've got more friends than you knew." "Apparently so." They stood quiet, admiring the structure. Then she noticed him favoring his right side, the old wound acting up. "You overdid it." "I'm fine." "Sit." She pointed to the porch steps. "I'll get the liniment." He could have argued, but didn't. Progress of sorts. She fetched the bottle, knelt beside him. "Shirt up." The scar had healed poorly, ridged and tight. She worked the liniment in careful, feeling muscles relax under her hands. Neither spoke. The moment held weight beyond medical necessity. "Better?" she asked finally. "Yes." His voice came out rough. He pulled the shirt down quick. Stood. "I should stay for supper. It's late." She kept her tone practical. "Seems foolish to cook separate when we're both here." Dangerous logic? Each small compromise of propriety made the next easier. But she was tired of cooking for one, eating in silence, tired of proper loneliness. They ate together again, talk flowing easier. He told stories from his scouting days, tracking through Apache country, mapping water sources, learning to read the land's hidden language. She shared memories of her father, his grand plans and terrible jokes and fierce love for this difficult place. "He'd have liked this," she said. "Neighbors coming together, barn raising, the way it used to be. Still can be, just takes someone stubborn enough to hold the center." Stubborn. That's one word for it. I can think of others. Strong, brave, smart enough to fight with paper instead of bullets. He paused. Beautiful. The word landed soft as moth wings. She froze, fork halfway to her mouth. I shouldn't have said that. He was already standing. "I'll check the stock." He left quick, screen door banging. She sat stunned, food forgotten, beautiful. When was the last time anyone had called her that? When had she last felt it? With calloused hands and sun-damaged skin and dresses mended past respectability. But the way he'd said it, not like the cowboys in town with their crude whistles. Like a fact observed, same as noting good fence work or clean water. She found him by the corral, checking hooves in the late light, stood watching until he noticed her. "I'm not good at this," he said without preamble. "Been alone too long? Forgot how to talk to people, to women, to—" He stopped, frustrated. To women you think are beautiful. A smile ghosted across his face. That category's pretty small. She stepped closer. Jonah, look at me. He did, reluctant. In the fading light, she could see his walls, careful constructions of distance and movement. Could see, too, where they'd started to crack. I'm not asking for promises. She said, not asking you to stay past what you planned. But while you're here, she touched his hand on the fence rail. While you're here, maybe we could stop pretending this is just about barns and trials. His hand turned, fingers interlacing with hers. Work rough palm, careful grip. What is it about then? I don't know, maybe finding out. They stood that way, holding hands like youngsters at a dance. The evening star appeared, bright and steady. Somewhere a coyote called, answered by another. The ancient conversation of wild things. Eliza. Her name in his voice sounded like discovery. I need you to know, I don't stay. It's not in me anymore. When the trial's done. I know. And she did. Had known from that first day, men like him carried leaving in their bones. I'm not my father, trying to hold what won't be held, but you're here now. That's enough. He lifted their joined hands, studied them like a map to unknown country. Then, decision made, raised her knuckles to his lips. Barely a touch, there and gone. But it shot through her like lightning, waking things she'd thought dead. We should go in. He said, early day tomorrow. They walked back careful, not touching but aware of each other. At the door, he paused. I'll still sleep in the barn. I know. But maybe coffee together in the morning, proper meal instead of rushing. Small step, tiny compromise. But she smiled wide. I'd like that. He touched his hat, habit so ingrained he did it bareheaded, then vanished into the new barn's shadows. Inside, she moved through evening routines, banking the fire, checking windows, braiding her hair for sleep. But everything felt different. The house hummed with possibility. She thought of her parents, their proper courtship, marriage at 18, babies coming regular until fever took her mother. Traditional path she'd rejected for this harder road. But maybe there were other ways to walk. Maybe connection didn't require rings and ceremonies. Maybe it could be simple as two people choosing each other for whatever time allowed. The owl called again from its perch. This time, she smiled at the sound. Her father had been right. It was worth loving. She blew out the lamp, settled into bed. Through the window, she could see light in the barn where Jonah was still awake. Reading, maybe by candlelight, or cleaning that rifle again. Hands needing occupation. Tomorrow they'd finish the barn. Friday would bring the trial. Resolution or complication. Beyond that, unknowable. But tonight she had a half-built barn, neighbors who'd proved themselves, and a man who thought her beautiful sleeping just across the yard. More than she'd had yesterday. Maybe enough for any life, if you knew how to hold it right. The fence wire sang its nightly song. She listened until sleep took her, dreaming of joined hands and sunrise coffee, of walls rising true and hearts learning to trust their own construction. The well rope sang against worn wood as Eliza hauled up the bucket. Third trip this morning, the stock tank had cracked in last night's freeze. Slow leak that needed constant refilling until she could patch it proper. Her shoulders ached, but it was good hurt. Honest work under clean sky. Let me. Jonah appeared at her elbow, reaching for the rope. I've got it. I know you do. But he waited, patient, until she stepped aside. 2 weeks since the barn raising, they'd found new rhythms, careful negotiations of space and task. He took the heavy hauling without making it seem like rescue. She mended his clothes without making it seem like ownership, balance delicate as frost on grass. The bucket emerged, water sloshing silver. He poured it into her waiting pail. Movements efficient. She noticed everything now, how he favored his left foot slightly in cold weather, how his hands stayed gentle even with stubborn animals, How he went still when riders appeared on the horizon. "Trials tomorrow," she said, though he knew. "Yes, Marshal Brennan thinks it'll go quick. Too much evidence against Croft." "Probably right." He lowered the bucket again. "You nervous?" "Should I be?" He glanced at her, reading what she didn't say. Tomorrow she'd face Whitcomb across a courtroom. Stand up public, tell her story to strangers. Let them judge whether a woman alone deserved to hold land. "You'll do fine," he said. "Truth's on your side." "Since when has that mattered?" He pulled up the bucket, set it on the well's edge, turned to face her full. "Since people like you started standing up to say it." The moment stretched, weighted with more than tomorrow's trial. Then her stomach chose to growl, loud in the morning quiet. He smiled, tension breaking. Breakfast. They walked to the house together. Inside. She set bacon frying while he sliced bread. Domestic dance they'd learned. Stepping around each other in the small kitchen. His sleeve brushed her arm, reaching for plates. She felt the contact like a brand. "I need to tell you something," she said sudden. He stilled, knife pausing mid-slice. "That first day, when you caught me on the windmill." She focused on the bacon, not his face. "I wasn't just startled. I was tired. So tired I didn't much care if I fell." Silence. The bacon popped and sizzled. Not wanting to die. Exactly, just not fighting so hard to live. Everything seemed too heavy. The debts, the loneliness, another season of barely scraping by. She flipped the bacon with unnecessary precision. "Then you grabbed my wrist, and for the first time in months, I wanted to hold on." Still, he said nothing. But when she finally looked, his face showed understanding deeper than words. "I know that, tired," he said quiet. She believed him, saw it in the scars, the restless movement, the way he'd drifted years without stopping. Two people who'd forgotten how to want things, learning again in each other's presence. The bacon burned while they looked at each other. She yanked the pan off heat, laughing sudden at the absurdity. "So much for breakfast." "I've eaten worse." He rescued the least charred pieces. "Army cooking makes everything else seem gourmet." They ate the burned bacon with thick bread and strong coffee, talked about nothing fence repairs needed, chance of rain, whether the bay mare was finally in foal, small words covering large feelings. After, he helped clear dishes, standing at the wash basin, shoulders almost touching. She made herself speak truth. "After tomorrow, after the trial, what then?" His hands stilled in the soapy water. "Depends on the verdict." "No, it doesn't." She dried a plate careful, set it in its place. "Whitcomb might get convicted or might go free. Either way, my fight's done. So I'm asking what happens with us." He resumed washing, motion deliberate. "What do you want to happen?" The question she'd avoided. Want was dangerous for women like her. Want led to compromise, to giving up pieces of yourself for the hope of connection. But not wanting that was just another kind of death. "I want you to stay." The words came out steady. "Not forever. I'm not asking for promises you can't make. But for a while. See if what we're building is as solid as that barn." He dried his hands slow, turned to face her. In the morning light through kitchen windows, she could see him whole trail-worn face, careful eyes, strength held in check. Could see, too, the war in him between moving and stillness. "I haven't stayed anywhere in 8 years." "I know. Might not remember how." "Might not." She stepped closer, hand rising to touch the scar on his jaw. "But you remembered how to build, how to help neighbors, how to make me want to hold on. Maybe staying's just another skill that comes back with practice." He caught her hand, held it against his face. Eyes closed like he was memorizing the sensation. "Eliza." "Just think about it." She pulled back gentle. "That's all I'm asking." He nodded, wordless. They stood apart but connected, kitchen air thick with possibilities. A horse whinnied outside Tom McKenna's distinctive gray. Jonah went to check while she tied up her hair, prepared for company. The trial had everyone nervous, afraid of what verdict might bring. Package from town. Tom called, not dismounting. Marshal said to bring it quick. Jonah took the wrapped bundle, frowning at its weight. Inside, they found court documents, witness lists, and something else, a letter in unfamiliar hand. Eliza read aloud, Miss Vale, I am writing to warn you about tomorrow's proceedings. Charles Whitcomb has brought in a lawyer from Denver, man named Morrison, who specializes in land disputes. He means to challenge your water rights on technical grounds, claims your father's Spanish grant was never properly transferred to American law. I cannot sign this for obvious reasons, but felt you should know. A friend. Young Charlie. Jonah said immediate, betting he wrote this. Why would he help me? Guilt, maybe, or just tired of his father's methods. He studied the documents. This Morrison's bad news. I've heard the name. He's taken dozens of Spanish grants for American interests. Her stomach dropped. Then we've already lost. No. He gripped her shoulders, gentle but firm. No, we haven't. Your father did file proper. I've seen the papers. This is just legal intimidation. But if the judge believes, Judge Navarro's no fool. He's seen this game before. His hand stayed steady on her shoulders. Besides, you've got something Morrison doesn't expect. What's that? Me. Slight smile. I helped survey half these grants for the Army. Know exactly what makes them legal or not. Let Morrison try his technical arguments. I'll bury him in technicalities. She breathed deep, drawing strength from his certainty. All right, what do we need to do? They spent the day preparing. Jonah sketched maps from memory, showing original Spanish boundaries and how they'd been recorded. Eliza gathered every paper her father had saved, receipts, tax records, correspondence with the land office, evidence of continuous occupation, improvement, beneficial use. As afternoon waned, she made coffee while he organized documents. The familiar ritual calmed her nerves. My mother used to say the land remembers, she said, watching steam rise. Every fence post driven, every well dug, every seed planted. Said that's what makes ownership not papers but partnership. Smart woman. She was. Eliza poured 2 cups, handed him one. Died when I was 14. Fever took her quick. Papa was never quite the same after. That why you've held so tight for them? She considered. Partly, but also for me. This place, it's all I know how to be. Without it, who am I? Same person you are with it. He set down his cup, caught her restless hands. Land doesn't make you strong. Eliza, you make the land worth fighting for. She looked at their joined hands. His thumb traced circles on her palm, gentle rhythm like water over stone. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of losing, of what comes after, either way. I know. He lifted her hands, pressed them together between his like prayer. But you've got something most people don't. What's that? You know how to stand alone. Makes you stronger when you choose to stand with someone. The truth of it hit deep. She'd fought so hard for independence, built walls so high. She'd forgotten strength could also mean letting someone past them. Jonah! But words failed. Instead, she leaned forward, rested her forehead against his chest, felt his arms come around her, careful as if she might spook. They stood that way, her hearing his heartbeat, him breathing in the scent of her hair. Not passionate embrace, but something deeper, 2 weathered souls finding shelter. A cough from the doorway made them spring apart. Tom McKenna stood there, hat in hand, trying not to grin. Sorry to interrupt. Wanted to say we'll all be there tomorrow. Every family Whitcomb tried to push out. Figured the judge should see who he's really protecting. Tom, that's... Eliza stopped, throat tight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Save it for after we win. He nodded to Jonah. Marshall wants you both at the courthouse by 9. Says to take the back road, fewer chances for trouble. After Tom left, awkwardness lingered. The interrupted moment couldn't be recaptured. They finished preparing in careful silence. Space between them charged but undecided. That night, she lay wakeful despite exhaustion. Tomorrow would bring resolution one way or another. But what she really wanted to resolve lay just across the yard in her barn, probably as sleepless as she. Near midnight, she gave up, pulled on her wrapper, stepped onto the porch. The night was clear. Stars scattered like spilled salt. Cold bit through thin fabric, but she welcomed its clean, sharp feeling to cut through muddle. Can't sleep either. She didn't startle. Some part of her had known he'd be there, sitting on the steps like standing guard. "Too much thinking," she said, settling beside him. "That'll do it." They sat quiet, watching stars wheel overhead. Her shoulder brushed his. Neither moved away. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she began, "will happen." He shifted, arm coming around her shoulders. Not pulling close, just resting there. "Tonight's what we've got." She leaned into him then, let his warmth block the wind. "Is it enough?" "It has to be." His voice rumbled through where she pressed against him. "Enough's all anybody gets. Question is what you do with it." "And what are we doing?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Best we can, I reckon. Two broke-down people trying to remember what wholeness feels like." She turned to see his face, found him already looking at her. In starlight, his eyes held depth she hadn't seen before, or hadn't let herself see. "I'm not broken," she said. "Neither am I." His hand came up, cupped her cheek light as breath. "But we've both got cracks. Maybe that's how the light gets in." Poetry from a man who spoke in fence posts and water rights. She covered his hand with hers, holding it against her face. "Stay tonight," she whispered. "Just stay. Here on the porch. Watch the stars. Let tomorrow wait." He studied her long, reading the request beneath the words. Not for more than she offered just presence. Company against the dark. "All right." He shifted, back against the porch post, and drew her against him. She settled between his raised knees, her back to his chest, his arms loose around her. Proper women would be scandalized, but proper women hadn't held land alone for 6 years, hadn't faced down gunmen, hadn't learned that propriety meant nothing when survival was at stake. "Tell me about the stars," she said. "You must have slept under them hundreds of times." So he did, voice low and steady. Told her the names he'd learned from Apache guides, Mexican traders, army astronomers, different ways of reading the same lights, mapping meaning onto darkness. His words wove around her like blanket, warming more than body. Somewhere between Orion's story and the Seven Sisters, she dozed, woke to find his arms tighter, her head on his shoulder. The east showed pale dawn approaching with its trials and verdicts. "Time to get ready," he said soft. But neither moved, held there by more than embraced by the knowledge that such moments were rare as rain in drought country. Finally she stirred, practical needs overcoming desire to stay. "Coffee first, then war paint." He smiled at that. "You'd have made a good soldier." "Too stubborn to take orders." "Best soldiers usually are." They untangled, careful, already missing the contact. But something had shifted in the night. The careful distance they'd maintained had closed, leaving them standing on new ground. Inside, making coffee and cornbread, she felt him watching, turned to find him leaning in the doorway, expression soft as she'd ever seen it. "What?" "Just memorizing." At her puzzled look, "How you move in your kitchen, cup in the left hand, always. Way you test the griddle with water drops, things I want to remember." The words hit her like fist. Remember meant leaving. But before she could respond, he straightened. "Better get dressed. Long ride ahead." They prepared in silence, donning armor of clean clothes and determination. When they met at the horses, both looked transformed him in his one good shirt, her in the blue dress saved for occasions. "Ready?" he asked. She checked the documents in her saddlebag, touched the sage charm at her throat, looked at this man who'd appeared from dust, and changed everything. "Ready?" They rode out as sun crested the mountains, painting the desert gold behind them. Hearts Crossing stood solid, well-flowing, fences true, new barn catching light. Ahead lay town, courtroom, judgment. But for now, they rode together through morning light, two people who'd forgotten how to hope, learning again with each mile passed. Whatever verdict waited, they'd face it standing. And sometimes, she thought, that was its own kind of victory. The fence wire caught the wind, singing them on their way. Smoke rose black against the evening sky, visible from 2 miles out. Eliza's heart seized that was her land, her direction. She spurred the mare harder, Jonah matching pace beside her. They'd won in court today, Judge Navarro dismissing every challenge. But victory meant nothing if she came home to ashes. The smoke thickened as they rode, acrid smell of burning hay. Not the house she could see that's still standing. The haystack, the one she'd built through summer's sweat, fodder for winter months ahead. Riders circled the blaze, dark shapes against flame, 5, maybe 6. One threw something coal oil by the way fire leaped higher. "Wait!" Jonah caught her reins before she could charge in. "Look closer." She did, rage focusing into clarity. Not random vandals. Sheriff Croft stood at the edge, still wearing the badge he'd been ordered to surrender. Beside him, Hollis and 3 others she recognized from the night attack. But the trial the judge ordered. Men like that don't take orders well. Jonah studied the scene, calculating. They're wanting you to ride in hot. Give them excuse. My winter hay is already gone. Question now is keeping you alive. He pointed to movement near the house. There, someone's at your door. A figure working at her lock trying to break in or plant something inside. Evidence, maybe. Make it look like she'd done something to justify arrest. Circle east. Jonah said, "Come up behind the house. I'll give them something else to think about." Before she could protest, he spurred forward, riding straight at the gathered men, not charging, just steady approach of someone with business. "Evening, Sheriff." He called out pleasant. "Bit late for agricultural work." Croft spun, hand dropping to his gun. "Reyes, should have known you'd turn up." Like a bad penny, they say. Jonah kept his hands visible, peaceable. "Course, I could say the same about you. Thought Judge Navarro made things clear about harassment." "Don't see no judge here." Croft smiled ugly. "Just a concerned citizen checking on fire hazard. Dangerous. All this dry hay so close to buildings." Eliza used their distraction, walking her horse quiet through the shadows. The figure at her door was focused on the lock. Didn't hear her approach. 20 feet, 10. Close enough to see it was Will Sander, Croft's deputy. Young, nervous, probably wishing he was anywhere else. Good. Nervous men made mistakes. She slid from the saddle, grabbed the shovel leaning against her wall, stepped up silent, raised it high. "Will..." He spun, eyes white with startlement. She swung the shovel flat side into his belly. Air whooshed out as he doubled over. She kicked the gun from his hand, sent it spinning into darkness. "What were you planting?" She kept the shovel ready. "What evidence?" "Nothing I wasn't." But his eyes flicked to the leather pouch at his feet. She scooped it up, found papers inside. Forged receipts showing she'd bought coal oil, blasting powder, dated yesterday. Going to claim I burned my own hay or something worse? Will stayed doubled over, gasping, boy playing man's game in over his head. Shouts from the haystack, Jonah's distraction working too well. She heard his voice staying calm. Croft's rising angry. Then Hollis, cold and professional. "Just shoot him. We'll say he drew first." Her blood iced. She grabbed Will's shirt, hauled him upright. "You're going to call them off." Can't Croft won't listen? Then make him. She pressed the shovel handle against his throat. Just hard enough. Or I start screaming. Bring the whole valley running. You want to explain to Judge Navarro why you were breaking into my home. Will's Adam's apple bobbed against the wood. All right, all right. She marched him around the house, shovel at his back. The men had formed a half circle around Jonah, who sat his horse easy despite guns pointed his way. The burning haystack cast everything in hellish light. "Sheriff," Will's voice cracked. "We need to go. Busy here, boy." Croft didn't turn. "Whatever it is can wait." "No, sir. Someone's coming. Lots of riders from town." That made them look. Will stood shaking under their gaze, Eliza mostly hidden behind him. "What riders?" Hollis asked, sharp. "Don't know. Dozen, maybe. Moving fast." A lie. But doubt flickered across faces. They'd counted on isolation. Darkness. Witnesses changed everything. "We're done here anyway." Croft spat toward the burning hay. "Fire's containing itself. No crime in watching, making sure it don't spread." "Thoughtful of you." Jonah said dry, "I'm sure Miss Vale appreciates the concern." "Where is Miss Vale anyway?" Croft's eyes narrowed. "Thought she'd come running to save her property." "Probably still in town, celebrating her victory." Jonah shifted slightly, clearing his draw if needed. "Legal victory. The kind that sticks." Croft's face darkened, but Hollis touched his arm. Professional caution overriding anger. "Another time," Hollis said quiet. They mounted, Will scrambling onto his horse graceless. As they turned to leave, Croft looked back. "This ain't over. Reyes, you neither. Wherever the woman's hiding?" "Looking forward to it," Jonah replied mild. They rode off, hoofbeats fading into darkness. Only when they were gone did Eliza step out, legs shaking with delayed fear. Jonah dismounted quick, caught her as she swayed. "You all right?" "Fine, but they were going to." Hollis said, "I heard." His arms tightened around her. "But they didn't. You stopped them." She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in leather and smoke and safety. "The hay's gone. All of it." "I know." His hand stroked her hair. Gentle comfort. "We'll figure something out. Tom might have extra, or we'll cut fresh." "That's not the point." She pulled back to see his face. "They won't stop. Court victory means nothing if they can burn and threaten without consequence. Then we make consequences." He touched the forged papers she still clutched. "This helps. Proof they're framing you. Judge Navarro will. Will what post guards forever, they'll wait. Week, month, year. Then one night," she shuddered. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Hey, look at me." She did, finding steady strength in his eyes. "They want you scared, want you selling cheap and running." His voice stayed soft but certain. "That's not who you are." "How do you know who I am?" "Because I've watched you stand, watched you fight, watched you choose hope when despair was easier." He leaned his forehead against hers. "You're not alone in this anymore. Remember?" The word broke something in her. She grabbed his shirt front, pulled him down, kissed him with all the fear and anger and relief coursing through her. He froze a heartbeat, then responded, arms crushing her close. Not a gentle kiss, desperate, claiming, acknowledgement of how close they'd come to loss. When they broke apart, both breathing hard. She saw her own wildness reflected in his eyes. "Eliza." "Inside." She tugged him toward the house. "We need to put out the hay fire, save what we can, but first she needed walls around them. Needed to know they were whole, alive, together. The hay could wait 5 minutes. In the kitchen, she lit the lamp with shaking hands, turned to find him watching her, heat and hesitation warring in his face. "We shouldn't, you're upset." I'm furious. She stepped close, hands flat on his chest. At them, at this situation, at how helpless I feel, but not at you, never at you. He covered her hands with his. What do you need? The question, seriously asked, nearly undid her. When did anyone last ask what she needed? Hold me. Just hold me like the world's not burning down outside. He drew her in wordless, guided her to the worn settee, pulled her down beside him, tucked against his side. She curled into him, ear over his heart, listening to its steady beat. Tell me it gets better, she whispered. Tell me they don't win. Can't promise that. His hand stroked her back, slow and soothing. But I can promise you won't face them alone. For how long? The question she'd avoided asking hung between them. His hand stilled on her back. Long as you'll have me. She lifted her head, searched his face. What are you saying? I'm saying, he struggled with words, this man more comfortable with action. I'm saying maybe I'm tired of drifting. Maybe I found something worth staying for. Just maybe. A smile ghosted across his lips. Definitely, if the offer's still open. Instead of answering, she kissed him again. Softer this time. Promise instead of desperation. When they parted, both were smiling. We should deal with the fire, she said, reluctant. We should. Neither moved, safe in the circle of his arms. The outside world felt manageable, but duty called, as it always did. They worked through the night, dousing embers, salvaging what little hay remained unburned. Tom McKenna arrived near dawn. Someone had seen the smoke. Word spread. By full light, half the valley had gathered. 40 acres of good grass on my south range. Hendricks offered, You're welcome to cut it. Got extra hay from last year, another neighbor added. Trade you for some of that mending you do. On it went, the community closing ranks around one of their own. Eliza stood overwhelmed as offer piled on offer. Why? She asked Tom, quiet. Some of them barely know me. Because you stood up, he replied. Showed it could be done. That means something out here. Marshal Brennan arrived by noon, taking statements, examining evidence. The forged papers particularly interested him. This is federal crime now, he said. Mail fraud. If nothing else, I'll be arresting Mr. Croft shortly. He'll run, Jonah warned. Let him try. Brennan smiled cold. Running makes him fugitive. Expands my jurisdiction considerable. As the crowd dispersed, Eliza found herself alone with Jonah by the ruined haystack. Black stubble covered the ground. Ugly scar on her land. It'll grow back, he said, reading her thoughts. Come spring, you won't even see the burn marks. And us, she looked at him sideways. Will we grow back too? He caught her hand, laced their fingers together. Already are, I think. She squeezed his hand, drawing strength from the contact. Stay for supper. Real supper, not burned bacon. Every night, if you'll have me. The simple declaration made her throat tight. That sounds like a promise. It is. He turned to face her full. I know I said no promises, but that was before. Before what? Before I knew what home felt like again. She kissed him then, there in the ashes of attempted destruction. Let the town gossip. She'd earned the right to choose her own path. When they finally went inside, the forged papers lay on her table like snakeskin, evidence of malice, but also of desperation. Croft and his allies were running scared, making mistakes. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait. Let the law work. Keep building what they tried to burn. He gestured out the window where neighbors still lingered, talking in small groups. You've got an army now. They won't find you easy prey again. That evening, as she cooked the promised supper, he sat at her table cleaning his rifle, domestic scene that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. The house felt different with him in it, fuller, warmer, alive with possibility. I've been thinking, she said, setting down plates. About the spare room. He looked up, hands stilling on the gun. Oh. Seems foolish. You sleeping in the barn when there's a perfectly good room empty. She kept her voice practical, but color rose in her cheeks. Winters get cold. Barn's not really fitted for... Eliza. He set aside the rifle, came to where she stood. You sure? She met his eyes straight. I'm sure about you. The rest we'll figure as we go. He kissed her forehead. Soft blessing. Then I'd be honored to accept. They ate in comfortable silence, planning tomorrow's work. Cut hay at Hendrick's place, repair the pump house roof. Ordinary tasks that suddenly seemed precious. As night fell, she helped him move his few possessions from barn to house, watched him hang his hat on the peg by the door, place his boots beside hers, small acts of belonging that made her heart full. Thank you, she said as they prepared to part for their respective rooms. For what? For staying, for fighting beside me, for... She gestured helpless. Everything... He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. Thank you for giving me reason to... They stood there, neither willing to let go. Finally, she laughed soft, broke the spell. Good night, Jonah. Good night, Eliza. But long after they'd separated, she lay awake knowing he was just beyond the wall. Not alone anymore. Whatever came next, Croft's capture, winter's hardships, spring's promise she'd face it partnered. The fence wire sang its nightly song, and she smiled. Even that harsh music sounded like hope tonight. The rain came sudden as salvation. First drops spattering the dust while Eliza and Jonah worked the new fence line. She'd smelled it building all morning, that electric tang that promised storms, but after 2 months of drought, she'd stopped believing. Inside, Jonah said, but she was already running, not for shelter, but toward it. Stood in the yard with arms spread wide, face turned up to heaven's gift. The drops quickened to downpour, her dress soaked through in seconds, hair streaming. She laughed wild, spinning like a child. Water meant grass. Grass meant cattle surviving winter. Survival meant keeping the land another year. You'll catch cold. Jonah called from the porch, but he was smiling. Don't care. She splashed through forming puddles. It's raining. He stepped into the storm, caught her mid-spin. Water ran down his face, dripped from his hat brim. So it is. They stood there, 2 fools grinning in a thunderstorm. Then lightning cracked close, and he hustled her inside. In the kitchen, she shivered as excitement gave way to chill. He handed her a towel, turned politely while she wrung out her hair. I'll make coffee, he said. You should change into... His words cut off. She followed his gaze to the window, saw what silenced him. Riders approaching through the rain, 6 of them, moving with purpose. Her joy evaporated. Croft! No. He squinted through streaming glass. That's Army uniform in front. They reached the porch as the riders entered the gate. The lead man touched his hat brim, water cascading off. Captain Morrison, Fort Buchanan, looking for Jonah Reyes. Eliza felt Jonah tense beside her. That's me. Need you to come with us, Mr. Reyes, Colonel's orders. Am I under arrest? No, sir, but the Colonel was real specific about bringing you in. The captain's eyes flicked to Eliza, back to Jonah. Said to tell you it's about the Massilia matter. New evidence. The Massilia matter. His lost ranch, the shooting that made him run. Eliza's hand found his, gripped tight. When? Now, sir. Storm's supposed to break by evening. Could make Fort Buchanan by midnight if we push. Jonah stood still as stone. She could feel him calculating, weighing duties against desires. Can it wait until morning? She asked. Surely the Colonel... Ma'am, I've got orders. The captain looked genuinely apologetic. Mr. Reyes isn't under arrest, but refusing to come would change that. It's all right. Jonah squeezed her hand. Let go. I'll get my things. Inside, she watched him pack sparse belongings. His movements were controlled, but she saw the cost in the set of his shoulders. This could be good, she said. New evidence might clear your name. Might. He buckled his saddlebags. Or might be someone's idea of justice finally catching up. You don't have to go. We could… Run. He turned to face her. That's what I've been doing 8 years. Maybe it's time to stop. She wanted to argue, to plan, to fight. Instead, how long? Don't know. Week, maybe, if it goes well. He touched her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. Will you be all right? I've been all right alone for years. That's not what I asked. She caught his hand, held it against her cheek. I'll miss you, but I'll be here when you get back. Promise. Have I ever lied to you? He kissed her then, fierce and quick, memorizing. They returned to the porch where the soldiers waited. The rain had softened to drizzle, clouds lighter to the west. Mr. Reyes, the captain was impatient. We need to ride. Jonah swung into his saddle, looked down at her. In the gray light, his face was all plains and shadows. Take care of things, he said. Take care of yourself. He touched his hat brim, that gesture she'd come to love, and rode out with the soldiers. She stood watching until they disappeared into the rain. The house felt hollow without him. She moved through evening chores mechanical, jumping at every sound that might be hoofbeats returning. But the night stayed empty except for rain on the roof. Morning brought Tom McKenna with troubling news. Croft's been spotted near Skeleton Ridge, him and 4 others, camping rough. Tom accepted coffee grateful. Marshal Brennan's got men searching, but that's hard country. Why tell me, though she knew? Because with Jonah gone. Tom looked uncomfortable. Look, it's none of my business what you two are to each other, but everyone knows he's been watching your back, without him here. I'm fine, Tom. Are you… He leaned forward. Eliza, these men already tried burning you out. What's to stop them trying worse? Nothing. That was the cold truth. But she'd be damned if she'd run scared from her own land. I'll be careful, she promised. Tom left reluctantly. She spent the day on inside chores, rifle always within reach. Every shadow could hide threat. Every rider on the road made her heart race. By evening, the isolation pressed heavy. She'd grown used to Jonah's quiet presence, the simple comfort of another person near. Now the empty chair at dinner accused her of softness, of forgetting how to be alone. She was banking the fire when scratching came at the door. Not a knock, something else. She grabbed the rifle, approached careful. Miss Vale? A weak voice. Young. Please, need help. Through the window she glimpsed Will Sander, Croft's former deputy, blood on his shirt. Horse nowhere in sight. Every instinct screamed trap, but the boy looked genuinely hurt, swaying on his feet. She opened the door, rifle first. What happened? Croft. Will slumped against the doorframe. Went crazy when I said I was done. Shot me when I tried to leave. The blood looked real. So did the pain in his eyes. But Croft could have staged this, sent Will as bait. Where are the others? Don't know. I ran. Horse threw me near the wash. He pressed a hand to his side, and fresh red seeped through his fingers. Please, I know I got no right to ask, but… Thunder rumbled, and rain started again. She made her choice. Inside, slow. She kept the rifle on him while he stumbled to a chair. The wound was real bullet furrow along his ribs. Painful, but not fatal if kept clean. Why come here? She gathered medical supplies. Movements efficient. Why not town? Croft's got friends in town. Here. He sucked air through his teeth as she cleaned the wound. You helped Tom McKenna when everyone else turned away. Thought maybe you'd help me too. I'm not running a charity for reformed criminals. I know. His voice dropped. But I got information about what Croft's planning. Her hand stilled. What kind of information? The kind that might save your life. But first, he met her eyes direct. First, I need your word you won't turn me over to him. She weighed options, trust the boy who'd tried to frame her, but he was here, bleeding, defying Croft. That took courage. You have it. Now, talk. As she bandaged his ribs, Will spilled everything. Croft's hideout location, the railroad money still funding him, plans to hit her place tomorrow night when the marshal's patrol shifted routes. He's got dynamite, Will finished. Means to blow your well, make the land worthless. Her blood chilled. Without water, she'd have to abandon the homestead within days. Why warn me? Will looked down. My ma raised me better than I've shown. When Croft shot me just for wanting out, he shook his head. Man like that don't deserve loyalty. She finished the bandaging, stepped back. Outside, rain pounded harder. You can sleep in the barn tonight. Come morning. I'll be gone. He stood careful. Heading east, got family in Missouri, might take me in. Will, she waited until he met her eyes. Thank you. He colored. Don't thank me, just trying to balance the scales a little. She gave him blankets, food, watched him settle in the barn, then returned to the house to plan. Croft would come tomorrow night. She could warn the marshal. Hope he arrived in time, or... She touched the sage charm at her throat, thinking. Jonah had taught her about terrain, using land's advantage. She knew every rock and gully of her property. Maybe it was time to stop defending and start hunting. The next day passed in preparation. She moved the cattle to the far pasture, away from danger, cached water barrels around the property in case of fire, set up positions where one person could seem like many. As dusk approached, she took station on the rise behind her house. From here, she could see all approaches. The rain had passed, leaving clear skies and good moonlight. They came at midnight, just as Will had said. 5 riders, moving quiet through the wash. She recognized Croft's bulk, Hollis's careful seat. The others were hired guns, faces unknown. She let them get close. Dismount near the well. Watched Croft unpack something from his saddlebags, the dynamite. Beautiful night for it, she called out. They spun, guns clearing leather, but she was behind good cover, rifle steady on the biggest target. That you, Miss Vale? Croft tried to sound easy. Awful late to be out wandering. My land, I'll wander where I please. She shifted the rifle slightly, moonlight catching the barrel. That dynamite looks federal, stealing from Army shipments now. You don't know what you're talking about. No, then you won't mind when Marshal Brennan asks about it. He's real interested in missing Army supplies. Silence. She could see them calculating a rusher position or retreat. Of course, she continued. He might not ask if you're not around to answer. You threatening me, woman. Stating facts. You're trespassing. Armed, with explosives, I'd be within my rights to shoot. She let that sink in. But I'm feeling generous. You leave now, forget you ever heard of Heart's Crossing, and I forget I saw you tonight. And if we don't? She fired, bullet kicking up dirt between Croft's feet. He jumped back, cursing. That was warning. Next one won't be... Hollis spoke quiet. She's got position and moon behind her. Be suicide to rush. Listen to your friend, Eliza called. He's got professional sense. Long moment balanced on knife's edge. Then Croft spat, shoved the dynamite back in his saddlebags. This ain't over. Yes, it is. She kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. You lost, Croft, lost your badge, your backing, your nerve. All you've got left is running. So run. They mounted. Croft clumsy with rage. As they turned to leave, Hollis looked back at her position. Ma'am, he touched his hat. For what it's worth, I'm glad I didn't have to kill you. Strange courtesy from a hired gun. Likewise, Mr. Hollis. They rode out fast. She held position until certain they were gone, then made her way down to the house. Her hands shook as reaction set in. Inside, she lit every lamp, needing brightness, checked windows, barred doors, tried to feel safe, but the house echoed empty. She missed Jonah with an ache like hunger, wanted to tell him how she'd used his lessons, turned the land to her advantage, wanted his steady presence, his quiet pride in her strength. "I did it," she whispered to the empty room. "Stood them off alone." But alone felt different now, not strong, just solitary. A sound at the door made her grab the rifle again. Then, familiar voice. "Eliza, it's Tom." She let him in, saw his relief at finding her whole. "Will Sander came to my place," he said. "Told me everything. I rode for the marshal, but wanted to check you all right." "Fine. They came. I sent them running." Tom stared. "By yourself, how?" She told him brief. His expression shifted from worry to awe. "Damn, woman. Remind me not to cross you." Despite everything, she smiled. "I'll try to remember you're a friend." Speaking of friends, Tom looked uncomfortable. "Any word from Jonah?" "Not yet." "He'll be back." Tom said it firm, like saying it made it true. "Man looks at you like he does. He'll be back." After Tom left, she sat at the table where Jonah had cleaned his rifle just nights ago. The house felt larger without him, but not empty anymore. She'd filled it with her own courage, her own victory. Tomorrow she'd work the land, tend her cattle, continue building the life she'd chosen. When Jonah returned, and he would return, he'd find her neither broken nor needing rescue, just missing him, which was its own kind of strength. The fence wire sang soft in the night wind. This time, she heard promise in its voice. Dawn broke pale over the ruins of the old chapel, its adobe walls crumbling back to earth after 40 years of weather. Eliza had ridden out before first light. Following Tom McKenna's message, Croft and Whitcomb had been spotted near the sacred spring, the one marked on her father's original water claim. She dismounted behind a stand of mesquite, studying the scene below. 6 men clustered around the spring stone basin, Whitcomb in his city clothes, out of place as a peacock in the desert. Croft, badge gone but swagger intact. Hollis and 3 others, patient as hunting dogs. Papers spread on a flat rock maps. Documents. Whitcomb pointed at something. Voice carrying faint, "Boundary clearly shows the spring outside her claim." Lies, but clever ones. If they could convince a judge the water source lay beyond her boundaries, her land became worthless desert. Movement to her left, Tom emerging from cover, rifle ready. To her right, Sam Rodriguez and 2 of the Hendricks boys. They'd come as promised, her neighbors turned allies. But something felt wrong. Too easy. Finding them here exposed. Croft might be angry, but he wasn't stupid. The shot came from behind, bullet whining past her ear. She rolled, came up behind a boulder as more shots cracked. Ambush they'd been waiting. "It's a trap!" she yelled, but her allies were already scattering for cover. The camp below erupted, men diving for positions, returning fire. They'd been the bait, knowing she'd come to defend her water rights. Now her small force was pinned between 2 groups. She fired at muzzle flashes, trying to count enemies. Too many! And more horses coming, she could hear hoofbeats approaching fast. "Eliza," Tom's voice, urgent. "North side." 3 riders breaking from the canyon, trying to flank. She swung the rifle, fired, missed, lever, aim, fire again. 1 rider tumbled from his saddle. But they kept coming. Soon they'd be surrounded, cut off from their horses. She looked for options. Found none. Just rocks and open ground and death closing in. Then a sound that lifted her heart. A rebel yell, wild and fierce, echoing off canyon walls. Jonah crested the ridge at full gallop, Marshal Brennan beside him, a dozen federal badges following. The tide turned in seconds. Croft's men, caught between forces, threw down weapons. A few tried running, but the marshals were ready, cutting off escape routes. Eliza stayed behind her boulder, rifle trained on Whitcomb. The banker stood frozen by the spring, watching his schemes crumble. "It's over," she called. "Put your hands up." He turned toward her voice, and she saw something break in his face, the mask of civility slipping, revealing the desperate greed beneath. "You don't understand," he said. "The railroad needs this water. Progress demands you surrender." Marshal Brennan interrupted, walking up calm as church. "Charles Whitcomb, you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and about 6 other charges I'll think of by lunch." As the marshals rounded up prisoners, Jonah found her behind the boulder. His clothes were dusty from hard riding, exhaustion etched in his face, but his eyes held only relief. "You all right?" "Fine." She wanted to touch him, ensure he was real. "How did you, the army?" "Cleared my name. The witness who'd testified against me admitted he lied, paid by railroad interests." He helped her stand, hands lingering on her arms. "Soon as I was free, rode straight back. Met Brennan coming this way. Tom raised the alarm." "But how did you know to come here?" His smile was grim. "Because I know you. Heard Croft was after the water rights. Knew you'd never let that stand." Around them, the marshals worked efficiently. Croft cursed steadily as they bound his hands. Whitcomb demanded lawyers, senators, anyone who might save him. Hollis sat quiet, professional to the end. Miss Vale, Brennan, approached. "Need your statement, but it can wait till we get these men secured. You might want to see this, though." He handed her the papers from Whitcomb's Rock, forged surveys, false boundaries, even a deed with her signature copied crude. "Would any of it have held up?" she asked. "Not in honest court, but with enough money, enough pressure." Brennan shrugged. "Good thing we won't find out." As they loaded prisoners onto horses, young Charlie Whitcomb rode up. His face was haggard, aged years in weeks. "Miss Vale," he stayed mounted, hands visible. "Came to witness my father's arrest. Make sure it's done right." "Charlie," Whitcomb started. "Don't." The son's voice cut sharp. "You destroyed everything grandfather built. Our name, our honor. For what more money we didn't need." Father and son stared at each other across a gulf wider than years. Then Charlie turned to Eliza. "The bank's books are open to federal audit. Any debts you have there, they'll likely be forgiven. Least I can do. I don't want charity." "Not charity, justice." He looked older than his years. "I've got a lot to make right. Might as well start with you." He rode away without waiting for response. The marshals followed with their prisoners, leaving Eliza's small group alone by the spring. "Well," Tom pushed his hat back. "That was more excitement than I planned for a Tuesday." Nervous laughter rippled through the group. They'd won, all safe, but the nearness of disaster left everyone shaky. "Drinks at my place," Sam offered. "Think we earned it." The others agreed, heading for horses, but Eliza lingered by the spring, Jonah beside her. The water bubbled eternal from the rock, feeding the cottonwoods her father had loved. "It's really over," she said, not quite believing. "This part is—" He touched the sage charm at her throat, the one she'd worn through everything. "But keeping the land, making it prosper that work never ends." "I know." She covered his hand with hers. "Good thing I've got help now." "About that?" He pulled a paper from his shirt. "Colonel gave me this. Discharge papers. Officially. Said I'd served long enough. Time to build something instead of chasing shadows." She read the formal language that set him free. No more running. No more past haunting his steps. "What will you do?" "Well," he tucked the paper away. "There's this woman I know. Stubborn as a mule, tough as leather, pretty as sunrise. Thought I might see if she needs a permanent hand." "Permanent?" "If she'll have me." He pulled something else from his pocket, a simple silver ring. Found this in Tucson. Nothing fancy, but... Yes. He blinked. I haven't asked yet. Then ask. He laughed, went to one knee right there by the sacred spring. Eliza Vale, will you... Yes. She pulled him up, kissed him before he could finish. Yes, to all of it. The question, the ring, the life together. He slipped the ring on her finger. Simple band that caught morning light. You sure I've got nothing but my hands and my horse? And your heart. She pressed her palm to his chest. That's worth more than all Whitcomb's money. They stood by the spring, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Around them, the desert bloomed in the wake of rain. Flowers she hadn't seen in years painted the hillsides purple and gold. We should join the others, she said eventually. They'll wonder. Let them. But he stepped back, offered his arm formal. Mrs. Reyes-to-be. Not Reyes. She took his arm. Vele Reyes. This land stays Vale land. Remember? Vale Reyes, then. He helped her mount. I like the sound of it. They rode back together through country, made new by rain and victory. At Tom's place, their friends had gathered not just the fighters, but families too. News traveled fast in the valley. About time, Sarah McKenna called out, spotting the ring. Tom owes me $5. Said it'd take you another month to propose. You were betting on us. Jonah looked amused. Whole valley was. Tom grinned. Only question was when, not if. The impromptu celebration lasted past noon. Stories shared, toasts raised with whatever liquor could be found. The community that had stood with her, now celebrating with her. But eventually, she and Jonah slipped away. Rode home to Hart's Crossing as afternoon painted long shadows. The house stood solid, the new barn catching light like a blessing. Needs work, Jonah observed, noting all the repairs still waiting. Everything worth having does. Inside, she started coffee while he brought in firewood. Simple tasks made special by sharing them. When they sat at the table, cups between them, she felt the rightness of it deep as bone. When? He asked. The wedding. Soon, before something else tries to kill us. She smiled over her cup. Unless you want time to change your mind. Already wasted 8 years. Don't plan on wasting more. A knock interrupted Judge Navarro. Come to take official statements. He beamed, seeing them together. Heard the news already? Whole town's talking. He settled his bulk in a chair. Also heard young Whitcomb's opening the bank's books. Might be some irregularities in your favor, Miss Vale. Vale Reyes soon. Jonah corrected. Ah, even better. Strong names for strong land. The judge pulled out papers. Now, let's make sure those criminals stay locked up. They gave their statements as sun set behind the mountains. The judge wrote careful, building cases that would hold. When finished, he stood to leave. One more thing. He pulled out an official-looking document. Territorial governor sent this. Seems your water rights are now protected by federal law. Something about interstate commerce and railroad regulations. The details would bore you, but the result, no one can challenge your claim again. Eliza held the paper with trembling hands. Everything she'd fought for, confirmed and protected. Thank you. Thank yourselves. You stood when others would have sold. That courage brought federal attention, changed laws. He donned his hat. Territory needs more like you, both of you. After he left, they sat in gathering darkness, too full of victory for words. Finally, Jonah rose, lit the lamps. I'll sleep in the barn tonight. Why? She stood too, faced him. We're engaged. The whole valley knows. What are we protecting? Your reputation. I think I shot that myself, about the time I pointed a rifle at the sheriff. She stepped closer. Stay. He caught her hands. Eliza, I'm not asking for more than you're ready to give, But I'm tired of empty houses and careful distances. She met his eyes steady. Stay. The word hung between them like a prayer. Then he lifted her hands, kissed each palm. All right. They prepared for bed careful, aware of the newness. When she came from her room in nightdress and wrapper, he was standing by the window in shirt sleeves, watching stars appear. Second thoughts? She asked. No. He turned to her, just thinking how different it all looks. Same stars, same land, but now it's home. Yes. She joined him at the window. He wrapped arms around her from behind, and they stood watching night settle over their domain. Tell me what you see, she said, in our future. Work. His voice rumbled through where she leaned against him. Good years and hard ones. Maybe children, if we're blessed. Neighbors to help, community to build, simple life, but solid. Sounds perfect. You sure no grand adventures, no easy wealth? She turned in his arms. I've had adventures, nearly got killed several times. Wealth. She touched his face. I'm holding it. He kissed her then, soft and certain. When they finally made their way to bed, the same bed, propriety abandoned for warmth, she felt the last walls between them fall. They lay twined together, talking soft of tomorrow's work, next season's plans, the life they'd build on the foundation of trust and courage. Outside, a screech owl called. Inside, two people who'd forgotten how to hope remembered together. The fence wire sang its nightly song, but now it sounded like a lullaby. She fell asleep to that music and the steady beat of his heart, safe in the knowledge that morning would find them together. The land was saved, the water ran free, and two souls who'd wandered separate trails had finally come home. The morning after rain blessed the land. Eliza knelt in the damp earth beside her mother's grave. The small cemetery plot behind the house held only 2 markers, weathered wood that needed replacing with stone, now that she could afford it. He's a good man, Mama, she said quiet, arranging wildflowers in a mason jar. Different from Papa, quieter, steadier, but he sees me true. Wind stirred the cottonwood leaves overhead, and she could almost hear her mother's voice in their whisper. Asterisk. About time. Child. About time. Eliza Jonah stood at the cemetery gate, hat in hand. Sorry to interrupt. Tom's here about the wedding plans. She rose, brushing dirt from her skirt. 3 days since the confrontation at the spring. 3 days of adjustment, learning to move as 2 instead of 1. Tell him I'll be right there. But Jonah lingered. You all right? Just telling her about you. She touched the wooden marker gentle. Think she would have liked you. Hope so. He studied the graves. Want me to carve new markers cedar would last? Or we could order stone from town. Stone, she decided. They deserve permanence. They walked back together, fingers brushing but not quite holding. In daylight, they maintained some proprieties, though the whole valley knew they'd jumped past conventional courtship. Tom waited on the porch with Sarah, who'd returned from Tucson fuller with plans than her carpet bag. Church is available Saturday, Sarah announced without preamble. Reverend Mills can perform the ceremony. I've already spoken to the women about food. Saturday's in 4 days, Eliza protested. Unless you want to wait, Sarah's eyes twinkled. Though from what I hear, waiting's not your strong suit anymore. Heat flooded Eliza's cheeks. Jonah coughed, suddenly interested in the porch boards. Saturday's fine, she managed. Good. Now, about your dress. I have a dress. You have work dresses. This is your wedding. Sarah's tone brooked no argument. My sister's sending her dress from Tucson. Should arrive tomorrow. You're about the same size. Eliza started to protest. Charity sat ill with her, but Jonah touched her elbow, light. Let them help, he murmured. It's what neighbors do. She subsided, watching Sarah and Tom organize her life with military efficiency. Strange to let others take charge after years of sole command. Strange, but not unpleasant. "What about family?" Tom asked Jonah. "Anyone we should wait for?" "No family left." Jonah's voice stayed level. "Been alone since the troubles in Massilia." "Not alone anymore." Tom said firm, "Valley takes care of its own." The men wandered off to discuss ranch business, leaving the women to wedding plans. Sarah produced a list that made Eliza's head spin. "It doesn't need to be fancy," Eliza said, "just legal and binding." "It needs to be memorable." Sarah gripped her hands. "You held this land against all odds. Least we can do is give you a proper celebration." By evening, the house buzzed with activity. Women arrived with offerings: preserved peaches for the wedding breakfast, lace for the dress, advice both wanted and not. Eliza endured it gracious as she could. Understanding this was their way of claiming her fully into the community. Jonah escaped to the barn, ostensibly to tend horses. She found him there as full dark fell, brushing the bay mare with unnecessary thoroughness. "Hiding?" she asked. "Strategic retreat." He set down the brush. "Your house is full of determined women. Man knows when he's outgunned." She laughed, moving into his arms, easy as breathing. "Cold feet." "Never." He rested his chin on her head. "Just wondering if you know what you're getting. Drifter with a questionable past, no family, few possessions. Man who saved my land, fought beside me, makes me remember joy exists." She pulled back to see his face. "I know exactly what I'm getting." He kissed her then, deep and certain. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "4 days," he said. 3.5. "Who's counting?" "Me." She stepped back before temptation won. "Now come inside. Sarah's threatening to measure you for a proper shirt." The days passed in a blur. The dress arrived cream silk with tiny pearl buttons, finer than anything Eliza had owned. She stood before her mother's mirror while Sarah made adjustments, hardly recognizing the woman reflected there. "You're beautiful," Sarah said around pins in her mouth. "Jonah won't know what hit him." "I look like someone else." "No." Sarah stood, studied her work. "You look like yourself, just polished up. There's a difference." The night before the wedding, tradition demanded they sleep apart. Jonah moved back to the barn, grumbling about foolish customs. Eliza lay wakeful in the too-empty bed, listening to every sound. Near midnight, pebbles rattled against her window. She peered out to find him below, looking sheepish. "Can't sleep," he called soft. "Neither can I." "Walk with me." She shouldn't. Tomorrow was the wedding. Propriety demanded, but they'd already broken so many rules. One more wouldn't matter. She pulled a shawl over her nightdress, crept out quiet. They walked hand in hand to the sacred spring, silver in moonlight. "Nervous?" she asked. "No, just," he struggled for words. "Keep thinking I'll wake up, find it's all a dream, that I'm still drifting, still running." "You're here." She pressed his hand to her heart. "Feel that real as heartbeat." "Eliza," her name came out rough. "I need you to know I'm not an easy man. I've got moods, silences, might be days I'm poor company. And I'm stubborn, sharp-tongued, too independent by half." She smiled. "We'll manage." They stood by the water, listening to its eternal music. Tomorrow would bring vows and witnesses, community celebration. But here, now, they made private promises. "I'll stand by you," he said simple, "whatever comes. And I'll help you remember how to stay." They sealed it with a kiss beside the spring that had sustained the land through generations, then walked back, content in shared silence. Wedding morning dawned clear and bright. Sarah arrived early with helpers, transforming Eliza from ranch woman to bride. The borrowed dress fit perfect, the pearl buttons catching light like tiny stars. "Something old," Sarah pinned up Eliza's hair with her mother's silver combs. Something new. A pair of delicate gloves from the church women. Something borrowed the dress, and something blue. She produced a ribbon the color of deep sky. Where does that go? Garter, for luck. Sarah's smile turned wicked. And for your husband to find later? Eliza blushed, but submitted to the tradition. When they finished, she stood transformed, but still herself, strength dressed in silk. The church overflowed with the whole valley come to witness. Eliza paused in the doorway, overwhelmed by the sea of faces. These people who'd stood by her, fought for her, now celebrated with her. Tom offered his arm. Ready? She nodded, suddenly unable to speak. The organ wheezed to life, playing something approximating wedding music. The crowd turned, smiling. And there at the altar, Jonah, dressed in a borrowed suit that fit surprisingly well. Black hair slicked neat, but it was his expression that stopped her heart. Wonder and certainty mixed, like he was seeing sunrise after years of night. The walk took forever and no time at all. Then she stood beside him, their hands joining as natural as breathing. Reverend Mills spoke about love and duty, partnership and perseverance. But Eliza barely heard, lost in Jonah's eyes. He squeezed her fingers. Private communication in the public moment. Do you, Jonah Reyes, take this woman? I do. No hesitation. Do you, Eliza Vale, take this man? I do. Clear and strong. The rings. Jonah produced 2 bands his plain silver, hers matching with tiny etched flowers. Where had he found such beauty in this rough country? With this ring, his voice rough with emotion. With this ring, hers steady despite happy tears. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. They kissed to cheers and applause, not the careful pecks of most church weddings, but real connection, promise of private celebrations to come. The reception spilled into the churchyard. Tables groaned under food offerings. Musicians struck up reels and waltzes. Eliza found herself passed from partner to partner, everyone wanting to dance with the bride. But she kept returning to Jonah, who danced awkward but willing. During a slower tune, he pulled her close. No regrets. Only that we waited so long. As afternoon mellowed toward evening, they made their escape. Rice pelted them as they ran for the wagon, decorated with ribbons and wildflowers. The whole valley seemed to follow, shouting good wishes. But finally, they were alone, riding home to Hart's Crossing as husband and wife. The house stood ready. Women had come earlier, leaving flowers and fresh bread. Small touches of blessing. On the porch, Jonah stopped her. Wait! Before she could ask, he swept her up, carried her over the threshold, old tradition for new beginnings. Inside, he set her down gentle. They stood in their kitchen now suddenly shy. Mrs. Vale Reyes, he said, testing the words. Mr. Vale Reyes. She smiled at his expression. You agreed to take my name too. Worth it to see you smile. He unpinned her hair careful, letting it fall in waves. Beautiful. The dress is Sarah's. Not the dress. His fingers traced her cheek. You, always you. They came together like rivers meeting, all the careful restraint of courtship abandoned. She led him to their room heart hammering with anticipation and nerves. Eliza. He caught her hands, held them steady. We have time, all the time in the world. The reminder eased her tension. They'd chosen each other for more than this moment, for all the moments to come. Later, much later. They lay entwined as stars appeared outside. She traced the scars on his chest, mapping the geography of his past. No more running, she said. No more alone. He answered. They dozed and woke and loved again, making up for lost years. When dawn touched the mountains pink, they rose together, pulled on robes, made coffee in their kitchen. What now? she asked, though she knew. Now we work. He gestured out the window at their land. Fences to mend, cattle to tend, life to build. Together. Always together. They dressed in work clothes, transformation back to themselves. But everything had changed, each task shared, each burden halved. As the sun climbed higher, they walked out to survey their domain. The well pumped steady. Cattle grazed in good grass. The new barn stood proud. At the boundary marker, Eliza placed her hand on the carved claim. Jonah covered it with his own. This land is Vale land, she said, and Reyes land, from now until forever. Forever's a long time. Not long enough. They stood there, two people who'd found each other across years of loneliness. The land spread before them, harsh and beautiful. Their land now, to tend and guard and pass to the children they'd raise. Behind them, the fence wire hummed its eternal song, but now it sounded like home. Jonah squeezed her hand, ready to start living. Eliza looked up at him, this man who'd caught her when she fell, stood beside her through storms. Chosen to stay when staying was hardest. Already started, she said. Hand in hand, they walked back to the house. There was work waiting, there always was, but they'd face it together, building something stronger than either could alone. The sun climbed toward noon, blessing the land with light, and somewhere a meadowlark sang, sweet herald of all the mornings yet to come. The gate closed soft behind them. Home at last. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Eliza and Jonah's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Please comment below and let me know where you're listening from. I love connecting with listeners from around the world and hearing your thoughts about the story. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850. Give this video a like and hit that hype button to help more people discover these frontier romances. Your support means everything and keeps these stories alive. Until next time, partners.